Listeners, Purple Druid presents Wargame Culture, and today we are going to talk about random events and random terrain. Inspirational prompts and narrative tools for war games and for role-playing games. As you probably know, I've been setting up for an epic Imaginations campaign. It's probably too ambitious, but I've been doing research and prep on it now for 2 years, and I think I've learned as much as I can to make this work the way I want to. And just as a proof, 21 June 2021, that's when I started making these notes for this campaign. It's all right here. We got all kinds of cool stuff. It started out, I was just going to use these little stickers, but anyway. Admittedly, I fell into a rabbit hole under a briar patch down in the dark with all the research. I started with the Solo Wargaming Guide, which we have here. And I was just going to use wooden blocks with some stickers. I just showed you the stickers. I was inspired by videos from Hathwell Khan and Joy of Wargaming, but it rapidly got out of control. In any case, I feel like now I have done everything that I can to get ready, and it's time to get started. So, also, I guess this is where I'm supposed to say, hit like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I would like to invite you, though, to check out wargameculture.substack.com for the full documentation of this campaign, how I'm designing it, how I'm playing it. All the games will be on there. There'll also be videos here, and we also talk about board game design for 2 board games that I'm designing. But let's keep going. In the latest Joy of Wargaming video, Mr. Wargaming uses some event tables from Henry Hyde's Wargaming Campaigns book. And I would like to say thanks for the shout out, John. I appreciate that. This is Wargaming Campaigns by Henry Hyde. It is a very thick and heavy book. It is super high quality. It has glossy pages. It has pictures. It has charts. It is an invaluable resource. If you do not have this, I would highly recommend that you get it. It will transform your gaming. But one of the things that Mr. Wargaming talks about are event cards and different random campaign events that he uses, and he rolled on this chart. There's another chart that you can add with playing cards. It has the value of the playing card. You draw the card, and you can tell that's what happens. If you play role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, you're probably familiar with random encounters and wandering monster tables. These cards work a bit like that, except instead of monsters, they have events or activities that affect the campaign, the tactical or the strategic position of your forces on the map. These events can be military, they can be political, they can be economic. Some of them might just turn out to be for flavor in your game or campaign. Now, if you bought Henry Hyde's book, you can go to the website and you can download the cards, the actual cards with all the text and all the gaming information. These are system neutral. They don't have anything in here really that applies to any specific game. They do have some period specific things, but you can pull those out. And as you know, I am very much into the crafting, and so I went ahead and cut these out, put a little stamp on the back, so I have a little deck of event cards. And so, here this one is pre-World War II historical, where Russia is presented. The Cossacks are revolting. Of course they are. Scorched Earth, the King is dead. All of these, all kinds of different things that you can incorporate into your campaign to add a little bit of spice, a little inspiration, and they toss in things that you need to figure out why they're there and how they'll affect your game. So, like I said, I prefer cards because you can use them right at the table without having to open the book and consult the chart. In addition, you know, when you roll on the table, that's all well and good. And if you want to have a hole where 50% of the time there's no effect, you know, that works for you too. Or you might roll something that that doesn't affect your game. So do you want to roll again? Do you have a chance of getting no effect? Do you want to count that as no effect? Or do you want to have something happen? Well, if you have the cards and there's something in here that you don't want, let's see here. You know, Deli Belly, what do I got here? I know I've got some here. Scurvy in the Fleet. If you're not doing a naval campaign, you don't need this card. You can pull it out. And that way you don't have to worry about it. Pirate Fleet, again, for a naval campaign, you don't need this card. You can take it out and you can go ahead and draw. Also, drawing the card, you know, it pulls up an interesting thing. Some of these things could be tactical. You may have extra forces added to your side. You may have confused communications. Perhaps you can force your opponent's forces to go and do something they don't want to do. Maybe you get reinforcements, or some of your troops decide they don't want to listen and they take off, and you know 20% losses due to desertion. Again, false intelligence, emergency supplies. These are all things that could theoretically, tactically occur in a particular battle. So when you have cards, you can pull them out of the deck and then have a separate mini deck to use to see what happens during this particular game. Now, did your opponent play Scorched Earth or Winter Shortages on you, and so you're supposed to be at a disadvantage? Well, you know what? I managed to round up some emergency supplies, and I can negate those negative effects. So, cards come in very handy. Let's see here. Finally, I wrote some notes here so I wouldn't forget anything, because there's a lot to cover and there's a lot going on here. And I almost missed this. One of the things that Henry Hyde talks about with his various cards here is that he has culled these cards from various sources, including a board game such as Soldier Kings, which I don't have, but I think I'm going to get it because if it has event cards, it might be cool. But not only, I mean, these are some of the sources. If you go back to the beginning, Tony Bass, Ancient Wargaming, he has a list of 16 event cards that you can play during a campaign turn. And so these, again, some of them are economic, some are political, some are military. And so they can affect the overall campaign and what's happening. So that's pretty cool. You can also make your own cards. You do not need anyone's permission to make up your own cards. You can just use a 3x5 index card. You know, this is just your basic lined index card, and you can make your own events cards. Which brings me to another thing that I wanted to talk about. Not only can you have political, military, or economic event cards, you can have terrain event cards or terrain effect cards. And this article by Conrad Kinch, this is in issue 474 of Miniature Wargames, which is a fantastic magazine. If you don't subscribe, you should. But this article has discussions of scouting, which is one of my favorite things in campaign games and tends to be somewhat neglected. But Conrad has ideas for spicing up your terrain and giving different effects to different types of terrain. So he lists them according to playing cards. You can draw a playing card and then consult this chart. But because I'm a maniac, I went ahead and made my own. And so for hills, for example, we have hills and scrub that blocks line of sight, concealment from enemy units within and without if they're more than 5 inches away, and all units within the feature have light cover when it comes to shooting. We also have rolling hills. These do not block line of sight, and you just treat as normal flat terrain. So once again, you might see a piece of terrain and think it's a great place to put a cannon, or maybe it's a woods and it might seem like a good place to hide some infantry, some skirmishers. But once you get there, you find out maybe it's not exactly what you expected. And you won't know until you get there, or unless you send some scouts. And so what I went ahead and did was I went into, actually I just used PowerPoint, and I made up some little cards that you can use to create some variety in your terrain. So I made some grassland cards, I made some forest and woods cards, I also made some cards for hills. I made some extra cards that I can cut out in order to, to make additional things if I have more ideas. And I just printed these out on cardstock, and I'm going to cut these out. And then when I set up a battle, I'll put these cards on the table. And once a unit approaches a terrain feature, I'll draw a card, and we'll find out exactly what the effects of that particular terrain feature what they are. Now here's a quick example of how I plan to use the hidden terrain and the terrain effect cards during games. So I'll set up a game like this. I'll set up the table. I know there's a town here that's already been determined from the scenario, or where the troops or the two different forces are meeting. I'll lay out random terrain. I made these little cards that have terrain on them, and so the forces that are moving in won't know necessarily what the terrain is until they send in some scouts. So we can play that. We can grab some scouts and put them on the table. These can represent units. These can represent whole individual scouts. They can represent units of scouts, however the scenario determines that. And then when they move into each section of the table, they'll be able to turn that over, and then we can lay out the battlefield. So we can move these troops along. They can move 12 inches, so they can move into another segment, and they'll be able to determine what the terrain is. And so once we've done that and got as close as we wanted to without necessarily possibly alerting, we can also have some rules for perhaps there are patrols. We have the enemy patrol here, and they're far enough away, they haven't spotted them, and say these fellas decide that they want to move over here and find what is going to be the best approach for the attack. And so they spend their turns moving through, and we identify the various pieces of terrain. So we have two woods, a hill, and a field. So once we've determined what the terrain is for the portion that's been scouted, we have grassland here, we have the two forests, the hill, and the field. Then we can begin to move on the table. And because our general doesn't want to try to take his regiments through the forest and get bogged down, the scouts will move ahead here. And now we're going to go ahead and draw for what do we have for the grassland. And so what I've done, I'll show you here. I did make a blank grassland card, but I also went ahead and grabbed these other blank extra cards because not everything should really be special. So as you can see, there is about a 3 in 8 chance that something will be special with this area. So we'll draw a card, and that's blank. So there's nothing special about this grassland, and we can go ahead and move our troops right on to the field. And yes, I still need to make some rules for how this will all work in actual practice. But let's say, for instance, the scouts here can identify that we have a marsh and we're going to have to make a turn. So we'll replace this with a marsh tile. And then the enemies, the soldiers will have to march along, and so on and so forth as we conduct the battle. So that's a way that you can use your cards. The hill cards, you can just put these out like so, next to the hill. You can put the forest cards on the woods, and that way when you decide, okay, my scouts are going to move into the woods, okay, what do we have for woods? These particular woods are heavy woods. They block line of sight. They provide light cover within 3 inches, and they are impassable for cavalry, difficult for infantry, no targeting units greater than 3 inches away, and no targeting units greater than 1 inch within or from without the feature. So a single model can move through the heavy woods, but no units can. So this scout would be able to return back and say, hey, you know what? We can't go through those woods at all. We're going to have to move this way across the field towards that hill in order to take this town. So definitely, I think it's kind of a cool thing. We could have drawn light woods. That blocks line of sight, provides light cover. It's difficult for cavalry and provides light cover for units within the feature at a range over 6 inches. This would allow our cavalry to move into this and be able to perhaps approach from a different angle, especially if the scouts get up here and are able to determine what lies ahead. Here we have some more grassland. Here we have more grassland. So yeah, I think it'll be really exciting, and having the hidden terrain like this will definitely make it more interesting for solo play. Not only did I make these, but these are also available to you on the Substack. If you're a subscriber on the Substack, you'll get a email that has a link to download those. It's also available for free on the itch.io store that I have. So you can download these on PDF and cut them out and use them in your own games. So there you are, 2 kinds of event or chance cards that you can use. Go ahead and leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear what you think about event cards or event tables. Do you use them in your battles? Do you use them in your campaigns? Share your experiences below. If you've used these and you have a story, go ahead and type it into the little box. I'd love to hear about it. Thank you for watching. I want to say thank you. The channel has grown a lot in the last year or so, and so I'm really pleased with that. And we're getting a lot more comments on the videos. Thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.